Yeah, so multi-criteria decision making may involve a number of analytical tools and methods in that. Okay, so it is not one thing. It is a combination of multiples of tools and techniques that can go in helping or arriving at decisions. Okay, so the level of complexity, interaction with the decision makers, and the level of details utilized in decision making process can vary substantially. I was giving you an example about climate change. Okay, actually we are doing one such project. I'm personally involved in one of the I won't say project. It is a research work to um, come out with scientific papers on what are the policy implications related to climate change that is there in Indian context. Policy implications pertaining to urban, whether this policy implications on climate change is actually percolating down into city planning and architectural or urban design issues or not. Okay, that's the question that we are trying to understand. Not only here, it is actually a US based university of there's one university, I forgot the name of the university, through which we have got this initiative where we are trying to understand it's throughout the all over the world. This kind of questionnaire is been sent to find out whether policies on climate change related stuff, we do have policy at national level. Okay, but those policies are getting percolated down into city planning or urban design related initiatives or not is the question that we are trying to understand. Okay, so we are in fact using a similar approach to which I was explaining. What we are doing is we are first identifying stakeholders in the country who can give specific right answer about climate change policy measures, okay, that government of India is taking. Number two, state government is taking. Number three, at the city level, okay, how the state level and national level policy is integrated in the city development plan. Okay, how far it is incorporated into the city development plan. This is how we are trying to collect the information. So first we have listed certain things, certain stakeholders, and we have developed a questionnaire survey that will be sent to these experts, and they will comment, and based on those comments we will process it further. Maybe I'll show it to you once we have some results. Okay, so I think it may take another 2 weeks, maybe before the end of this semester. If we have some draft results, I'll be able to show it to you before we close the semester. Okay, so in general, decision makers adapt the following criteria. Okay, first is identify multiple criteria on which the decision has to be taken. Identify alternate solutions to the same decision. Provide weightage or ranking of the criteria, and provide values ranking or for the alternative ideas. Okay. So, for example, let us say, like we said, moving from one destination to another destination, we have 3 or 4 ways in which we can go. Okay, so first we should identify these parameters or the criteria that will help in defining the decision. Okay, and alternate solutions. Let's say we were saying bus, cycle, motorbike, something like that, metro. Okay, and then we also said, we theoretically said, okay, I had financial implications. Caste is my criteria to decide on which mode to be, which mode of transport to be selected. Okay, so in that case, we said, okay, let's go with bicycle, or let's go with let's let's say metro or something like that. But how do we equate all this? Okay, how do we, let us say, without quickly judging on one dimension, if we have to ask, if we have to do statistically, with this constraint of caste, how do we rank taking bus? How do we rank metro? How do we rank public transport? How do we rank cycling? Okay, so that can be arrived by using weightage or ranking criteria. We'll see that what is this, and so on and so forth. Then finally, for we should give weightage to the decisions also, alternate decisions also. Okay, so for example, we've said safety is another criteria that I want to bring in. Okay, let's say if I go with cycle, hardly I may spend anything. That's okay. Financially, I'm cost wise, I'm able to satisfy this criteria. However, let us assume that on that day it is heavy rains are taking place, or cyclone has hit. There is a risk involved in it. Okay, now that risk will dictate this decision making. Okay, so since there is another component, caste is alone is not a criteria. The second component of risk comes into picture. So the decision will vary. Okay, so that needs to be considered when we assess the alternates as well. Okay, then there are certain things that we should know. Multi-criteria decision making does not provide right answer. So what do you mean by that? Does not provide right answer means it gives you options. Okay, it is not saying that okay, you go ahead with option B. Okay, it's not, it will not give you that answer. It will only tell you that okay, how in relation to A and C, how B is placed, or if in relation to B and C, how A is placed, or in relation to A and B, how C is placed. Okay, so it will not tell you that this is the ideal solution, but it will give you assessment, relative assessment of all the criteria. Okay, so further it does not provide objective analysis. Okay, it is like I said, it is not one dimensional. It will analyze all and then give you synthesis of it. Only the decision maker has to select this. Okay, does not relieve the decision maker. I put the word like this. It is written in the theory, the books. That's why I use a similar word. Okay, so let us say if I adapt this technique, does the role of decision maker is nullified? No, not at all. Actually, the decision maker has to make more wise decision based on the results that we get from the multi-criteria analysis. Okay, so even in the after obtaining the results from the multi-criteria analysis, only the decision maker has to synthesize it. For example, I'll give you the same example. We identified some 12 or 20 researchers in the field of climate change. Okay, and then we have given some 20 questions to answer them. Okay, all 20 may answer in different ways. Okay, and let's say one let us assume 10 may give in favor and 10 may give against, theoretically. Okay, let's say theoretically. So what do we say finally? We say that there is nothing, there's no positive aspects of it, there's no negative aspect of it, of climate change policy in the city. Do we say that? No. Finally, even after obtaining the expert's opinion also, it is the results are left with the decision maker. Let us in this case, I am collecting this information. It is left to me. So how do we synthesize this? How do I put this information for scientific community? Okay, what this 20 scholars have said on climate change. How I have synthesized the idea, how I have brought in the pros and cons of these things in a simplified way, or so in a way that everybody can understand. Okay, so even in the last, even after generating the results from multi-criteria analysis, the decision maker is not left out of the process. He has to be instrumental in evaluating the results also. Okay, it is his duty. That's what it is said here. Okay, so to simplify this, multi-criteria analysis involves a number of statistical tools and methods. Okay, we can adapt a number of statistical tools and a number of methods for analyzing a particular given problem. Okay, so another thing that we should remember is it will not give you answer. I think it is here. It will not give the result after applying multi-criteria decision making tool. It will not give you result. It will only generate relative results. Okay, so we have to decide based on the relative result, again discuss it, and then arrive at a particular decision making. Okay, so decision maker's role is important in all this. This is only a tool, okay, that will simplify all this multi criteria and arrive at a particular number. Okay, so that we should keep in mind. Okay, so what are the tools that is available under multi criteria analysis? There are n number of tools, I said in the beginning, right? In fact, we have already seen one method, that's on linear programming. Okay, linear programming was one-dimensional approach. Okay, so objective function was we have very limited parameters. Okay, so we were trying to analyze how do we increase the profit, or how do we improve the objective functions of a particular equation. That was our primary goal. Okay, so however, let us say in most practical cases, decision makers are faced with a situation where they must achieve more than two objectives. Okay, those may even be conflicting at the same time, or more than two criteria must be used for evolving at a decision. Okay, so if we have multiple multiple criteria, this is since we are discussing under this under multiple multi-criteria decision making, linear goal programming is one such method that we can see in the literatures, that we can use it for arriving at a particular decision. Okay, examples: production planning, maximize profit, maximize market share, or location selection, maximize sale or minimize delivery cost. So both the criteria has to be analyzed at the same time. If you see in the linear programming, we said cost was one of the only primary objective function that we were looking for. How much benefit that we can arrive at this. Okay, so if we add another component, okay, or multiple component in that, okay, in that case we can use linear goal programming for arriving at decisions. Okay, goal programming is one such one of the techniques used in the multi-criteria decision analysis. Okay, this contrast with, for example, decision tree or linear programming. Okay, it is in contrast with linear programming. That's what I was trying to explain, where we have a single objective. Yeah. So I was just explaining here as well, right? In the linear programming, our main focus was to improve that objective function, and in most of the case it was to let's say in the case example that we saw, it was to see how much profit that we can take. Okay, so here it may have more than one objective. Okay, and that needs to be addressed. Either optimize the expected monetary value for a decision tree, or optimize a single linear programming objective. In linear programming there is only one dimensional criteria that is there involved in that. However, in the linear goal programming, more than one criteria will be involved. An important technique that has been developed to supplement linear programming is goal programming. Typically, goals set by management can be achieved only at the expense of other goals. A hierarchy of importance needs to be established so that the higher priority goals are satisfied before lower priority goals are achieved. Okay, so I think I should have put some example. It should be there. It is not always possible to satisfy every goal. So goal programming attempts to reach at a satisfactory level of multiple objectives. The main difference is in the objective functions, where goal programming tries to minimize the deviation between the goals and what we can actually achieve within a given constraint. Okay, so if we say if we compare it with the linear programming, we said this is supposed to achieve, or this is our criteria was to improve this objective function, where we were looking for how do we maximize the profit. However, let us assume along with cost, we also wanted to check satisfy other, let's say, quality. Okay, I'm not worried about the 450 odd chairs and tables to be produced so that I get the maximum benefit. Okay, but I'm looking at the quality aspect of it. Even if we make let's say 400 chairs or tables as well, that's fine with me, but the quality needs to be achieved. Okay, so if we have certain other criteria, okay, then this linear goal programming will come into picture, which can be used. Okay, and there are certain things that I think we should discuss. Is a hierarchy of importance needs to be established so that higher priority goals are satisfied before lower priority goals. So cost, quality, okay, safety in while making it, let us assume these are our criteria. Okay, so first we should check which are to be achieved first, which are not first, which are our priorities. Okay, top priorities, and which are our lower targets. Okay, so that kind of hierarchy of objectives should be worked out when we discuss about linear goal programming. Okay, so actually we are not going to solve any problems using this. I am just putting theory part here. Only for some aspect we will go and do some problem solving. Okay, so we will not be doing any problem solving for linear goal programming, because we will see we'll use it somewhere as an integrated approach. Okay, so the second method that we can discuss under multi-criteria decision making is on the AHP, analytical hierarchy process. Analytical hierarchy process is one of the most uh, most often used tool in management and also in social science research, uh, where uh, where multi-criteria decision making or processes are involved. Okay, so in this case we will go through the theory now. In the next class we will see one problem solving as well. Okay, we will take up a problem and we'll see if that given how do we solve that given problem using EHP. So what is EHP? Again, all these things are we are discussing under multi-criteria decision making. Okay, so if I ask you to list what are the tools that we can use under multi-criteria decision making, you can say that linear goal programming is one, EHP is one, next there is one, analytical neural network, ANN is one. Okay, there are so many further tools as well. Okay, so that's also we can keep in mind. Okay, AHP is a method for ranking several decision alternatives and selecting the best one when the decision makers has multiple objectives or criteria on which the decision has to be made. Okay, so again, like I was explaining, if we have more than one parameters or more than one criteria to decide on, okay, based our decision is based on more than one or more criteria, then how do we arrive, how do we evaluate these criteria and how do we make judgment? Okay, so AHP is one, AHP is, has that inherent it is inherent in the method of AHP itself. Okay, where multiple criteria are involved. Okay, and the decision has to be made. The decision maker makes a decision based on how alternates are compared according to the several criteria. The decision makers will select the alternates that best meets their decision criteria. Yeah, see that's why in the beginning there is one term, one sentence that we used, that is the decision maker is not left out of the process at any given point of time. Okay, even after getting, let us say, theoretically let us assume there are 10 alternates that we have got, 1 to 10, and statistically saying, okay, I'll give you a simple example so that you can relate. I'll tell you, in government process, in government procurement process, let us say we have something called GEM and CPP. Okay, you just remember there's something a portal. Okay, these are portals, government, central government of India's portal, through which government organizations like ours or any other government organizations in the country can procure things randomly. Let us say if the institute wants to procure a computer, I can't go to market and then buy a computer and come back to institute and say I have procured. And the government does not accept this kind of transaction. It has to be through certain process. Okay, one such process is GEM, and another process is CPP portal is there. Okay, through which we can procure things. I'll to summarize what happens in the process. In GEM portal, for example, like we have Amazon or any other portal. Let's say if you search for laptop, we will get a number of options. Okay, let's say we have to feed in certain information. Let's say I'm looking for i7 and I'm looking for some good graphics in the laptop, and the budget is around 1 lakh. Okay, these are only 3 criteria I've used. If you do this search using this thing, we may arrive at a number of options. Okay, so the rule in the GEM process is you should take the least quoted ones. Let us assume if we search, if we are getting around 20 options, okay, 20 suppliers are there who can provide you i7 and who can provide you with a graphic card of so and so configuration, and who can provide you within the range of 1 lakh. But we have 20 options. Okay. In GEM portal, there is they have one standard protocol. They follow the least, they call it L1, lowest bidder. Okay, L1 has to be taken, and then that's it. Okay, maybe if you check the configuration, the supplier may be providing i5. Okay, but he is providing the enough graphic card, and it is within 1 lakh range. Okay, but unfortunately, if this comes into the list, okay, and this supplier is providing this under this, we don't have any option other than selecting this, because the system is programmed in a way that we can't make decisions, we can't change this after arriving at a particular result. Okay, least bidder has to be taken. That's the simplest answer I can explain. However, that may not be feasible. Okay, in many times. For example, in the same case, I don't want i5. Okay, I wanted i7. Okay, but since the system is so rigid, the decision maker has got no option rather than going by the system. However, in the other research process, that is not acceptable. Actually, we don't go by such rigid decision making process. Okay, even at this stage, the decision maker should have upper hand. Okay, in all this multi-criteria decision making, and even in AHP and all, even after obtaining the results, okay, the decision maker has upper role to say. Let us say we have obtained certain opinions, okay, like I said, on climate change, okay, and I have not convinced after all the synthesis of the results as well. Okay, I wanted more clarifications. Then I can still go back to new scientists, or we can categorize. Let us say the one who has responded so far, the 20 scientists which I was talking, or let us say senior people. Okay, now let us target the young minds, and let us see how they perceive the climate change related stuff. Okay, let us assume in all this 20, the senior people, let us assume theoretically, okay, they have not commented anything on the technological aspect of climate change. What are the tools that can be used, all that. Okay, and as a decision maker, I see that, okay, although I have received the very rich observations from these 20 experts, however, technical aspect is less discussed, or technological aspects of climate change is not at all discussed. So as a decision maker, what I can do is I can again go back and ask, or since I know that where is the problem, I can go back from the beginning, and then I'll say, okay, in addition to 20, I'm going to add another 10 and I'll increase one more criteria. Let us say there were 4 criteria to select this 20. I'll add the 5th criteria and say those who are technically driven, those who have worked on technological interventions on climate change. Okay, so then I will get, after this 10 people have responded, then I will have more rich information from which I can make decisions. Okay, I can comment more explicitly. Okay, so these things are possible. These things are possible under this multi-criteria decision making, and AHP is one of the most commonly used technique in planning, and even in the for example, let us say you want to come out with maybe I can share some reading materials also on this, very interesting reading materials as well. Even I can explain our own research project that I was just explaining how we are going about it, and I can also give you some reading materials on, let us say, how best these green building ideas or initiative works in a country. Okay, is it actually leading to sustainability, or it is a big business on its own? Okay, so both the answers are possible, right? Actually, if you see green building industry, it is a industry. Actually, it is a big market, and they have their own parameters of assessing, promoting, and forcing, or I won't say forcing, what do you say, recommending, okay, certain materials, certain equipment, certain fixtures to be used in the building. Okay, on the other side, there are certain benefits also that we get out of green buildings, right? So what is the balance? If I have to come out with some opinion on whether green building is actually contributing to sustainability, or it is contributing to the business of green buildings, and that's my question. Okay, and I want to get the opinion of the researchers. Then I can adapt a technique called AHP, and then come out with some observations on that. Yeah, and there are certain papers like that. Maybe I'll put it as a reading material later on. Okay, I think, did we discuss this? The decision makers make decisions based on how alternatives are compared to other. The decision makers will select alternates that that are best, okay, and that meets the criteria of decision maker. I was explaining about L1 here. Okay, so it is not a rigid system. It should satisfy the researchers or decision makers input. Okay, yeah. AHP answers which one. It is not like in the beginning in the multi-criteria analysis also I said the multi-criteria analysis does not give this is the answer. Okay, it will give you the relative answer. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this also, but this is how it will perform. Okay, it will not give you, okay, this is the best one. Okay, we have to select from, okay, which among these you can adapt. Okay, methods for ranking decision alternates and selecting the best one when the decision maker has multiple criteria. And in fact, we use weightages for each of the decisions, all alternates, and then one decision is taken for further processing. There is one example. Let us say selecting the most appropriate school for kid, and this could be if we see what are the criteria that we can use. Learning, we can explore how the learning environments are there. Okay, whether the kids have friends and they go to a specific school. Okay, that also we can check, and what is the school life and what is the infrastructure and so on and so forth. Okay, and how the training takes place in that school. Okay, what is the how they prepare, or how they mold the students for higher studies and other support. Okay, these are, let us say, these are the things that I want to use for selecting criteria for selecting school. Okay, so we may have multiple options as a result if we do this analysis. Okay, so there is some answer to it. We will discuss how do we arrive at this, okay, as we proceed. Okay, so here there are certain things that we should keep in mind. For example, buying a house. In this, the criteria can be cost, proximity to school, like having vegetation, okay, public transport, and so on and so forth. Okay, or if we are buying a car, price or the quality, appearance, and so on and so forth, or selecting a college again. Okay, these are some of the examples that we can use for understanding, to simplify our to the concept of EHP. Okay, there will be a number of criteria will be involved in for deciding a particular decision. Okay, for example, if you take this further, okay, let us say our goal is to buy a car, okay, and we may have a criteria. For example, I want to check this performance, style, and I have some cost restrictions as well. Okay, those performance can be subdivided as sub criteria. What is the braking system that is there, what is the new technology that is there, okay, all that, whatever related to the performance or which I decide, okay. So can be part of performance assessment criteria. Or let's say from the cost, how much maintenance cost will go in and how much I have to pay in the initial stage, okay, that is also important. And the brands, okay, and if you do this all, okay, we have all these brands that are alternates that I can buy, okay. So in AHP, what we have to do is we have to clear this, we clearly define these 4 steps before we actually start analyzing it, okay. So you remember all these steps when we solve a problem mathematically. Let's see how do we put forth this. For example, the first step is decompose the problem into hierarchy of interrelated decisions and alternate criteria, okay. So this is the first step. You have to make a diagram by saying, okay, this is my goal and these are my criteria, sub criteria, and then if it has to lead to alternates, okay, what are the alternates that I have for selecting a car, okay. Then use collected data to generate pairwise comparison at each level. We will see what is this pairwise comparison when we do the when we take up the example physically. And there's something called assigning eigenvalues to the weightages of each and aggregate the relative weightages, okay. Actually what we do is we assign, let us say, I'll explain briefly now so that you it should not be going out of our head, right. Here, for example, let us say buying a car is our goal, okay, and I have set 3 criteria, okay. All 3 criteria are not equally important for me, okay. Let us say for me style is important, okay. For example, if I have put phone, many times, okay, style or the new brand or new feature, okay, that is what we look for, okay, or performance, okay. So in this case, buying a car, maybe I have some restrictions. I have only, let's say, some 4 lakhs, that's my budget for car. And style, yes, I need a good style, but I can compromise on that. This is my most important criteria. Performance, of course, is also equally important, but relative to style is not that relative to performance, style is not that important. So if I say this is my first priority, cost. Second, I would say the performance should be good. Third, I would say yes, style, okay, I can compromise a bit when I compare with performance and cost. Performance, yes, I need the best performance, but I have limitations on cost, okay. So this has to be arrived at first, okay, and then weightages. This means, for example, let us say I was talking to you based on this pairwise comparison and weightage assigning, okay. So when we do this assessment, let us say there's one example after this as well. So we say that performance for me it is 60%, 0.6 of overall value. Cost is actually 0.9 of overall value that I am looking for, okay. Style, yes, I need it, but I think it is only 0.2% of overall. Yeah, this is actually not correct. Let's say style is 0.2 and cost is 0.6, so already is 80, is again 20. So let's make it 0.5, Okay, caste is 0.5, and then we have performance, which is 0.3, which is 8, and style 0.2. Okay, so the summation of this also should be 100, should not be more than 100. So performance 0.3, caste 0.5, and then we have style, which is 0.2. So the weightage is 0.5 times higher for caste, the weightage is 0.3 times higher for performance, the weightage is 0.2 times higher for style. Okay, so like that the weightages are assigned. Who will assign this? Again, the decision maker. Okay, so that's why decision maker is important, and his understanding in the entire his involvement, serious involvement in all the process is very, very essential to arrive at a right decision. Okay, standard scale used in AHP. I think you will not be able to understand it now, but I'll bring this table when we work out a problem. Okay, but remember that there is a scale used for analyzing AHP. Okay, I'll bring this out when we solve problem. Okay, I think we'll break for some time. Okay, right, fine. Scoring model is what we are discussing, and under scoring model, each decision alternates graded in terms of how well it satisfies the criteria according to a formula can be established. So what is scoring model? For example, let's say mall selection with 4 alternatives and 5 criteria. This is as an example, if you have to understand this. Let us say what are the decision criteria that we have. I have to check whether how close is it to the school. Okay, income, vehicular traffic, mall quality and size, and other shopping malls near the places, whatever. Okay, and there are 4 malls assigned in this category, and you want to know which is the most preferred one, and how it can be how we can arrive at which is the most preferred one, or least preferred one, using this scoring technique or weightages technique. Okay, let us say the important criteria that we have put up here, okay, is some weightages. School has got 0.3 weightages, okay, and income, vehicular has got 0.25 weightages, and size and other shopping facility has got least weightages. Is it summing up to 100, 50, 80, 100? Yeah, always remember that it has to be 100. Okay, should be equal to 1, should not be more than that, it should not be less than that. And these are some grades, okay, for each of the category. So how do we arrive at it? Let us say, for example, for first category, okay, it is just a multiplication of weightages to each of the mall, okay, that is, let us say these are placed at a distance of 40 is, let's say, 400 meters, 600 meters, 900 meters, and so on and so forth. Median income, okay, whatever it generates, okay, traffic in terms of percentage, okay, size in terms of the quantity, whatever, right? So let us assume like that. How do we arrive at it? It is just a multiplication of the value that is assigned for each of the mall versus the weightages that is assigned. For example, let's say 0.3 multiplied by the value for mall 1, okay, 0.2 of income multiplied by the value that is assigned for that particular mall, okay, and similarly vehicular criteria and the value assigned or arrived for that particular mall. Okay, so using the summation, it is nothing but the summation of this criteria versus the weightage. Okay, so for each mall, okay, the value is scoring is done and a specific value is arrived. Okay, so based on this, Malfour preferred because highest score has been given for that, followed by 3, 2 and 1. Okay, so this can be one technique that can be used for arriving at a particular solution. Okay, so this can still be modified. Okay, this is just a result, and like I said, decision maker can step in here further as well, and then make can put additional criteria here and then select one answer. Okay, it need not be primarily on the weightages assigned to each of the criteria, right? Okay, so this was one example. Again, this will also fall under multi-criteria decision making, and in fact when we discuss about AHP, all this comes under that, under AHP method itself. Okay, scoring will come, and then sorting out prioritizing the criteria will come into picture. Okay, all that once we all that is inherent in the analytical hierarchy process itself. Probably when we solve the problem, we will get into all of this. Yeah, okay, these are the keywords that is mentioned, that is there in the third unit. And in the fourth unit, there are certain queuing models that is discussed. Okay, what is queue and what is inventory model, okay, and simulations and so on and so forth. Most of it I'll be discussing only theory part. Okay, so we'll just see what is inventory model, we'll see what is queuing and waiting model. Okay, and simulations and concepts. Okay, I'll give you some idea about this, and also I'll tell you how we use simulations in building energy modeling. We can relate how what do you mean by simulations and so on and so forth. Yeah, PERT and CPM we will not discuss. I think you will be knowing it. And there's something called network analysis. I think I will give you one example on network analysis and I'll tell you how it works. Fine. So first topic that is mentioned here is on inventory models. This is actually primarily if you relate this to commercial establishments. Okay, so we can say that what is available and what is not available in the shopping or in the shops, okay, can be related. Okay, so we say there are so many other components that goes into defining of what is static inventory, dynamic inventory, probabilistic inventory, psychotic inventory, all that. Yeah, so at the moment we will see it when we process. I said we have to compare, we can relate this with the stock availability in the shop or the shopping complexes. Okay, we say that sometimes we will say that this is out of stock. So that means there's some relation between inventory and the stock. Okay, so that's the basic relation that we can bring in if we have to understand this inventory model. Why this problem arises when we say that the product is out of stock is because of the lack of inventory models or the poor inventory models that is available in the shop or so. Okay, so inventories, stocks of good being held in the future for sale. I don't think we need any explanation on that. Not replenishing the inventory soon enough to avoid shortages. Not using scientific inventories management system. Inventories are must for most of the companies. Cost associated with storing of stocks are huge Okay, actually one third of value of the inventories. So sometimes it cannot be stored for long as well, because we need to have large storage facility, grounds, okay, all that for this. Okay, so there should be a balance between uh, what is going out and what is demand in the market versus the stock that we have in hand. Then avoiding unnecessarily large inventories can enhance competitiveness. Okay, this is a kind of a monopoly they do. Okay, in some cases, just in time inventory system is one system that emphasizes planning and scheduling so that the needed materials arrive just in time for their use. Okay, so these are some of the keywords that is used when we discuss about inventory model. Inventory model uses it is a scientific application for management of inventories, stock inventories in a establishment. Okay, formulate mathematical model, describe the behavior of inventory system, seeks an optimal inventory policy, use computerized system to do that, and whenever there is a stock requirement, okay, automatic information has is brought in. Okay, it alerts the system for non-availability or to replenish the stocks. It is actually, there are two models that can be discussed under this inventory model. One is deterministic model, other one is stochastic model. Okay, in deterministic model, where we know that there will be a demand of some X unit within this 1 month time or 1 week's time, and then accordingly the inventories are stacked. Or we can also adapt what do you say, where we will not be able to assess. Okay, where we'll not be able to predict. Yeah, this was the correct word here. Where it's not able to predict what will be the demand. Okay, so there are two types of models that can be adapted for arriving at stock requirements. Okay, so in the first case, this is a simple model. It is also called economic order quality model, EOQ model. Is most common inventory model used by the manufacturers, retailers, and wholesalers. Okay, so the objective is to determine when and how the inventories should be replenished. Okay, to minimize the sum of the cost per unit time. Okay, so that there is less stress on the storage. Okay, at the same time, the stock should not go out of hand. Okay, then of course I have put two diagrams just to tell you that if this is the stock, okay, and we know that at a particular time the stock is getting over, we can replenish again. Okay, this is kind of a deterministic model where we know that, okay, after a particular time the stock will get over. Okay, this is actually you can take this as an example for deterministic approach or deterministic deterministic approach in inventory models. In the second case, where it is not clear, okay, how much time it will take for the stock to get over, okay, and where there is some unpredictability in the market. Okay, there is this is again a tool, statistical tool to use. They use it for replenishing the stocks in the sale. Okay, the second approach, okay, that I was trying to put up here, stochastic model designed for analyzing inventory system where there is considerable uncertainty of demand. Okay, we don't know whether in 1 month's time we'll be able to we may need 100 units or we may need 1000 units, we are not sure. Okay, so in those kind of system, stochastic models are applied, and in fact this is sometimes also called uncertainty models, uncertainty tool. Okay, so where the situation is unclear, or where we are not able to explicitly say what is the demand and so on, in those kind of things, stochastic models or stochastic tools are used. So how do we approach this? How do we approach this stochastic model? Within that, it can be continuous reviewing system of inventory. Okay, and initially, if you see the literature, it says sorry. Initially, they said they had two basket systems. Okay, so one is filled and another one is to check as a kind of a reserve. Two bin system was used, and now it's all computerized. Okay, continuous reviewing system. How much stock we have? As soon as somebody purchases one or two stock, okay, so we get to know at the counter itself whether what is the number of stock that is available now and how much has already gone in. Okay, and there are other stochastic periodic review models. Okay, for example, particularly for perishable materials. Okay, so it has to be dealt, or it has to be assessed at a particular time. Okay, and it can be a combination of these two, where stochastic multi-pointed models can also be discussed. Okay, so what do we have to understand here? Okay, just remember that the inventory models are there. Inventory model is how much stock is available and how much we need in the future. Okay, so it can be in two ways. It will also be useful in construction site as well. Okay, what is the inventory that we have, and depending on the work and depending on the time availability, whether these materials are sufficient enough to complete the stock, or we need more or less. Okay, this kind of inventories are done. It can be manually done. It can be, we can use now it is let's say if it is a huge let's say for example commercial establishment, manual inventory models will not work. Okay, so it has to be computerized system. Okay, second concept that is discussed is weighting a model or queuing model. Okay, so queue, it is nothing but queue. Okay, what happens in the queue, and is it a random or is it a model? Okay, queuing is also a statistical model. If you see from the lens of statistics, waiting time, queuing, this is also one of the statistical tool we use. And what is the benefit? What we will get out of this? There are so many things. For example, I'll give you one simple example. Let's say waiting in the traffic. Okay, so waiting in the traffic, does it of course from personal gain, we may be late to the office, or we may be late to reaching our homes, or we may be late to catching next train or flight, or so on and so forth. That is one personal loss. Okay, the second loss, it can be from the environmental perspective as well. Okay, people waiting in the traffic signals for long. Okay, and there are many studies that has been done. The fuel wastages because of the time spent or time lost in the traffic signals. Okay, there are, I think you can Google it. There are so many studies that says this we have to be efficient in the in the junctions, so that the traffic, if it is a continuous traffic, if it is a moving traffic, then it is not an issue actually from the fuel efficiency perspective. But if the vehicle is brought to halt, okay, and but nobody is going to turn off the vehicle, okay, and I think government of Delhi has taken an initiative requesting the vehicle owners to turn off the vehicle, okay, if they are at signals, okay. Why they do it? Is there any scientific background for such initiative? There are many studies that supports this kind of argument, okay, where a lot of money is wasted, lot of energy is wasted. Money is on one side, on the other side, lot of precious energy is wasted, okay, just because of this waiting time, increased waiting time, okay. So statistically this also can be understood. Actually there is one show, I don't know whether you have seen it or not. If we cross signals, right, if we cross signal, we have to pay fine, okay. We get a ticket and we have to pay fine of 500 or 1000 depending on the violation that we do, right. Actually the same concept is there in other European cities as well, but they actually calculate you have violated signal by how much in the if it is assessed. You have violated the signal by 1/10 of the second, or 2/10 of the second, or 3/10 of the second, okay. What is your intensity of violation? If it is a serious violation, let's say even you have almost arrived at the signal, but you saw the light turning on red, but you could not stop it, and you went on, okay. that is that is actually assessed, and if it is checked, if it is less than 1/10 or 2/10 or sometimes 3/10 of the second, then we are granted, okay, because at this speed probably you are not able to stop. But if the violation is beyond 3/10 of a second, okay, then it is considered as actually violation, where you could have actually stopped but you did not stop, okay. So this kind of assessment can also be or possible with the current technology that we have in hand. Yeah, this is actually prevalent in European cities. Yeah, used extensively to analyze production and service process, exhibiting random variability in the market. Yeah, queues arise when the short-term demand for service exceeds the capacity, most often caused by random variations in the time. Okay, I think let us not go into this much of theory here, but let us understand that what happens in queuing model, whether it is significant for us to is there any takeaway point for us to take for us to understand from this topic. Capacity problems are very common in industry, and one of the main drivers of the process design. Need to balance the cost of increased capacity against the gain of increased productivity. Queuing and waiting time analysis is particularly important in service systems. Okay, probably I will like to highlight this point here. Okay, then discussing on the other part. Okay, do we get affected by this queuing system? Maybe we may not have given focus. We may not have thought about it in a statistical way. Do we waste time in queuing? For example, let's say getting the tickets or waiting in. Let's say if you go to some service center, phone repairs, particularly if you go to some good service centers, Okay, so we have to take a ticket, token numbers, and sit. Okay, so they address the ones who have come earlier, and then our turn comes. Okay, so like that, particularly in service systems, in service sectors, the concept of queuing has to be understood very thoroughly, and the efficiency can be improved if we have understanding on that. And in fact, in the airport system also, and probably I think that is the one of the best thing, one of the most common thing that we will remember is ticketing or queuing up to drop our luggages in the in the counters in airport. Examples: a commercial queuing system. For example, in waiting in banks, ATMs, and gas stations, or in the petrol bunks, and so on and so forth. Transport services, vehicle waiting to in the in the tolls, okay, traffic lights, or other places, okay, or in the business internal service system, customers receive service are internal to the organization. Example: inspection, conveyor belt, and so on and so forth. There can be there can be a system in the process as well. And most importantly, in this can be seen in the social services systems as well. For example, let's say in the hospitals, or even in the judiciaries, okay, where we have to wait. Of course, it is there in all the process, but that can be that can be explicitly understood as well. Okay, there are three things. Maybe we just understood, or we have seen only queue, okay, as one component. Okay, we only know there's something called queue. Okay, from the lens of statistics, there are certain components that goes in defining this queuing system. Okay, from statistics perspective. So there's something called population. Okay, there's something called arrival process, queuing configuration, queuing discipline, and the service provided for that particular queue. Okay, and the process of service and the end result. Okay, I will see with example. Let's say what is the first one? There's something called population, the population from which the customer or the job originates. The size can be it can be finite, or it can be infinite. Okay, can be homogeneous, or it can be heterogeneous. Okay, so the kind of people that for which we are serving can be defined or undefined. It can be finite or infinite, because it is open-ended. Okay, let's say somebody coming for getting tickets for train. Okay, we don't know how many will come today. Okay, or maybe we can just assume that on an average this much may come. Okay, but that may not be the correct answer also. It can vary depending on season, depending on circumstances, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's first component. Second component, arrival process, determines how and when the customer arrive. Okay, important characteristics is to customers inter-arrival time. Okay, what they do between arrival and the service time. Okay, what happens in between. For example, let's say after getting ticket, you enter into platform, and then taking train, you have 1 hour wait time, or you have more than 1 hour wait time. Or for example, if you go to airport, sometimes we end up 3 hours before the scheduled arrival. What do we do in that time? Okay, what happens? What kind of facilities that needs to be provided, or how these wait times are can be commercialized. Okay, this is one of I think, I don't know, it is my assumption. This is also one of the tricks the big businesses they put on the on the commercial jets, saying that the passengers should arrive at least 1 hour, not 1 hour, 2 hours, or sometimes 3 hours, international flights, right? But once you go inside, you have, let's say, you have 2 hours of spend time to spend where the shopping can take place. It can be induced. It can be induced also. Yeah, I may be wrong also. I'm just telling you it's highly likely that that is possible. To correctly specify the arrival process requires data collection of inter-arrival time and statistics analysis. Third one in this component is queue configuration. Okay, specifies the number of queues. It can be single or multiple line to a number of service station. Their effects on the customer behavior and bulking or maximum size. Okay, so for example, one thing can be like we see in the ticketing system. Okay, where we have multiple service providers. Okay, this is one multiple queuing configuration can be achieved, or it can be like this. Okay, this is how we see in the airports, right? And this is how we see in the train stations. Okay, these configurations have different service providers adopt different strategies or different queuing system. This is that will also have an implications on overall process. Service mechanism itself, okay, can involve one or more service facilities with one or several parallel service channels. Okay, most analytical queuing methods are based on assumptions of exponentially distributed services. So, how do we provide the service at the other side? Okay, that is also important to be understood. And probably this may be the first time you will be hearing. There's some discipline. Okay, we end up fighting if somebody goes from here. We fight with them, right? So in statistics, there is specific terminology that is given to that. For example, first come first out, first in first out, last in first out, service in random orders, shortest processing time, or service according to the priority. Okay, for example, let us say boarding, right? We all know that there's something called priority boarding. Okay, so we can take that as one good example to understand this service according to the priority. Or it can also be taken from emergency perspective, where we are all, let's say, some of them are in hospital, but they are waiting to consult doctor. But suddenly there's one emergency and nothing that person has to be shown. Okay, so the priority is taken into picture. So queuing discipline refers to logical ordering of customers in queue that determines which customer is chosen for service and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are the 5 things when we talk about queuing model or queuing system that can be understood from this. Okay, and one last thing, I think there's something, this is also in line with the queuing system. There's something called Markovian model, where it indicates unlimited queue capacity or infinite population. Okay, so if it is a continuous process, there is a model called steady state Markovian model to understand this phenomena of queuing. Okay, so there are so many parameters that goes into quantifying this steady state Markovian model or queuing model. I have just put the parameters alone, so just to know what parameters mean. For example, having a number of customers that to be served, probability of n customers in a particular given time, arrival time, effective arrival time, or maybe the service that is to be provided. Okay, or other ancillary things. There are so many components that is mentioned here to that can be used uh, for computing infinite population in a given case in a queuing system. Okay, so these are two keywords that is mentioned. That's about inventory models and Markovian queuing model, and there's something called simulation concepts. This is again this is one of my favorite subject where I specialize in building energy simulations and modeling. Okay, I did my PhD also on modeling. Okay, how do we model cities? How do we model cities for decision making? So simulation is nothing but where we try to recreate the real world into virtual world, and then we put in certain situations, and then we try to simulate that in the virtual environment to check how it works. Okay, so experiment with a model mimicking the real world into the existing world. For example, we commonly use this in the building energy, lighting, wind, and other analysis as well. Cheaper and less risky than experimenting in real system. Simulates creativity since it is easy to test new ideas. A powerful complement to a traditional tool. Okay, I also encourage that we should definitely use tools. We should definitely use sophisticated tools for understanding building physics or and so on and so forth. And maybe in your field where you talk about constructions and related stuff, you should know what are the tools available, okay, and how best you can use this tool to support your decisions. Okay, so if you can do that, it will be great. Generally, this is actually called a bottom-up approach. Simulation is normally called bottom-up approach. What do you mean by bottom-up approach is, let's say if you want to understand a city, it can be understood. There are two ways. Okay, one is top-down and another one is bottom-up. Top-down is we have policy implications, right? We say that okay, this city can have, let's say, I'm just theoretically saying this neighborhood can have only 100 houses, or let us say national level we have certain policy. Okay, so you cannot build anything within 500 meters from high tide line. Okay, so this is kind of a top-down approach, policy level approach. Okay, where we see macro things and then come down and regulate the smaller component. However, in the bottom-up approach, where we do small modifications in the unit level, and then it will have a greater implications. I'll give you another example so that you can understand what is bottom-up and top-down approach. Okay, we were talking about climate change, right? A little bit while. Let's say we have what do you say, Kyoto Protocol and other new Paris Protocol. Okay, new 2015 we had one climate change declaration, right, where the countries of the world agreed on certain things that we will do something. We will do something on related to climate change. Let's say cutting down on carbon emissions, cutting down on GHG emissions by X units by 2030 or 2025. Okay, so how does this percolate down to a house where I am living? Okay, where they have the leaders have committed something at a world platform that as a country, let's say for example India, we will work towards bringing down the carbon emission by X numbers by 2025. Okay, so let's say the government of India has promised or agreed in the in the climate forum. So how do we achieve that? Okay, so it has to be brought, your policy has to be brought down from the national level, and then it should percolate down. I'll give you an example. Let's say in a similar line, where we said bringing down the carbon emissions, right? If you remember, can we set our AC, home AC units to 18 degrees Celsius? Now we can do, actually, right? Up to 16 we can do, right? Now in the last 6 months, there is one policy that is brought by the Government of India, which is in line with climate change agreement, that you can't set your home AC units less than 24 degrees Celsius. Okay, in fact, I think all the new systems, new AC system that we get, you will not be able to modify lesser than 24 degrees Celsius. Why? Because if you bring in more lower temperature than this, lot of carbon emission takes place. Okay, we are comfortable at 24 degrees Celsius, but we for some reasons, okay, this is called the behavior, okay, unrealistic behavior of the users, or unscientific behavior of the users, that is actually one of the major cause for poor performance of the building and increase carbon emissions. Okay, so this is one example for top-down approach. Okay, so where the government has said you can't produce AC units and you can't set your AC unit temperature less than 24 degrees Celsius. So it's a top-down approach. Bottom-up approach is, let's say, we can do as an architect, we try to bring in some passive techniques in the houses. Okay, we make our buildings work better, okay, at the unit level. Okay, and then we say that, okay, naturally I can make this building less dependent on artificial AC units. Okay, and then maybe for some part, let us assume, I'll give you a theoretical explanation. This is the existing house, okay, and then I have used certain passive techniques. In existing house, this consumes 100 units of energy, okay, in the for cooling and for ventilation. Okay, but I have used certain passive techniques where I have provided enough cross ventilations and other techniques, and I have used high thermal mass, or I have used some buoyancy effects in the building, where because of this natural convection and natural high performance, this building does not require 100 units of energy. It can run on 80 units of energy itself. Okay, already as an architect I have contributed here. Okay, and then we can further use this. Out of this 80, we have to depend some time on air conditioning. That's okay, fine. So this is kind of a bottom-up approach, okay, where we do something at the unit level, and then it will have implications on the city, and nation, and so on. And simulation is one tool that we can use in the process. The system is broken down into suitable components of entity. The entities are modeled separately and are connected to a model. The basic principles apply. It can be static. It can be continuous. Okay, simulations can be continuous also. That means it's all virtually created. Okay, we can run for 1 day, 1 hour, or we can run for annual. We can do real-time simulations also. All that is possible. One of the components that we should remember when it comes to simulation that we should keep in mind is the verification and the efficiency of the model. Is the model correctly built, or is the program correctly modeled? Is it doing with the intent that what it intend to do? Actually, when we recreate this real world into the virtual world, okay, we may end up losing some of the data. Okay, so it is not 100% possible to recreate whatever that is there in the natural setting in a virtual world. Okay, there will be some loss of data, and we should know what is it and what is the efficiency of our virtual model. That's one thing. Second thing is the validation of the model. Okay, validation is let's say I have recreated this in the virtual world. Okay, and if I do, let's say, natural light analysis, daylight analysis. Okay, and I say that okay, this room may get a lux level of 300 or daylight factor of 5 throughout the day based on simulation. This has to be checked in the real time. Okay, also we should go to that particular unit, and then using measuring devices, we should calculate what is the lux level that you get and what is the daylight factor that you get, and this result and the simulated results has to be checked. Okay, and if it is plus or minus 5%, then it is acceptable in this case. In some case, in extreme cases, even 30% variation is also acceptable statistically, but I think we in many a times we try to achieve 5% error, plus or minus 5% error. Probably I'll also use a word, you will remember this, RMSE error, RMSE, okay, root mean square error. Okay, so this is one thing that can be used. So validation is done to check how accurate these models are when we compare to real things. This is also part and parcel of this. Strengths, okay, of course it is a quantitative assessment and it is flexible, and we can do many iterations and so on and so forth because it's all virtual. We are not actually spending money on that. Weakness is it can take long time and it requires substantial data. Yeah, that is very, very crucial. Like I said, if we lose out in crucial data in the conversion stage itself, okay, our model will be poor and it will not be realistic and we'll have issues later on. Okay, so this is one thing. Yeah, finally I think I'll stop here. I have not touched not touched in the sense what we will do is we will spend some more time and work out some problems on correlation, regression and AHP. Okay, so with that I stop, and I request all of you to